each of you has abilities that such that you could consider yourself an empath. Okay, so what I would like to hear from each of you is what does it mean for you to be empathic and how did you discover you were empathic? Let's start with you, Karen.
Well, so I've been empathic my entire life. I was always the kid who felt everything and, would wind up sobbing in a corner somewhere if something was going on with someone else. And so I didn't actually understand that that was what it was for many years. When I was in college and living in the dorms, I actually thought what I was struggling with was anxiety or something like that, because I was packed with people all around me. And I thought I had significant anxiety, and also that my body never felt very good because my empathic abilities are both emotional and I also feel it in my body. I'm a physical empath as well, which is can be fun. And so I didn't really understand that that's what was happening until I was in my late 30s or early 40s. I'm 58 now, so it's been several years that I've been working with it. But as soon as I understood it and started to get some tools and learn things, my world changed. And the things that I thought were anxiety and panic attacks and weird illnesses were actually just other people's stuff. And so I use it in my work a lot. I keep my shields up unless I'm working. And when I'm working, my stuff leaves and whoever I'm with comes in and I feel what they're feeling.
Wow. Okay, so it almost sounds like I know you're not completely turning it off, but it sounds like you're turning it off if you have your shields up.
Um, I shield when I'm doing things like when we travel, and I'm in an airport, or when
Okay.
we're driving through a big city. When I want to just be with the people I'm with, I do. I keep my shields up and I turn it down so that I can function, because otherwise I would be a mess.
Hmm. Okay. And what about you, Kristen?
Same thing. I, I missed part of the question because I went
Oh,
frozen.
it
So can you
froze a
repeat the
little bit.
question?
So what
Yeah.
does it mean for you to be empathic and how did you discover that you were empathic?
Mm. It's a little bit it's interesting. I this the same thing. I've always been very sensitive to other people. And I learned that some empaths, we learn this trait from living in toxicity in families where we have to over navigate everybody else's thoughts and feelings. And I started to hear things from other people, sort of the whispers. Nobody was talking out loud. Same thing with animals. And as I did that, I realized I was picking up on other people a lot more than I was hoping to, or that I was intending to, or that I was open to. And so I had to learn how to turn that off, how to turn that down, how to tune into my energy and to boundary up when other people's energy was influencing my own. Um, so I do a lot of practices on that. And even though at the work that I do, people consider empathic, I still have my own boundaries in my practice so that I keep myself energetically clear as I'm doing the work and things don't seep in. That doesn't mean it works perfectly all the time.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you. And Kirsten, how did you know that you were empathic and what does it mean to you?
So I didn't really know I was, to be honest with you. I think it was one of those things where I didn't understand what an empath was because again, this was not my world. None of the vernacular was was even familiar to me. But I was highly sensitive as a child. I'm also a childhood sexual abuse survivor, so that's where it gets muddy. I didn't understand if, was this the empathy that I'm feeling and just being sensitive to everything, was that related to the abuse or was this something that, I was born with? So I had to kind of dive into that as I figured it out. But I am highly overwhelmed in crowds, and I work as a consultant. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I work in big events, which I've had to learn how to boundary as well during those events because I'll just be completely drained by the end of the day if I don't do that. But that took a while to figure that piece out.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking because okay, so you each say that you were sensitive as a child,
Mhm.
but as a child, you may not necessarily know what's going on, even up through your teens
Mhm.
and young adulthood. So it's like at some point, you have to have an experience or discover or come to the realization, okay, something else is coming in that's not mine. And so are you each saying that you just had such a sense of feeling overwhelmed, or Kiersten, you used the word
Mm-hmm.
exhausted. And I definitely have
Yeah.
noted that you can feel just exhausted after being
Mm-hmm.
around certain people or in certain places.
Yeah, it was when I was starting to kind of go down the rabbit hole and figure out, what's happening to me? Why am I talking to mostly children in spirit? And so I'm trying to figure that out, but I'm also trying to figure out, okay, what is this? Why am I so tired all the time? Excuse me. Why am I feeling this way? So for me, it was kind of twofold because I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I manage this new skill apparently I have, but also how do I work? How do I continue to work and go out there and not have those energies that are not mine affect me? So one of the things that I did at the end of the day, and I still do at the end of the day, is I ask that anything that's not mine kind of fall off of me and kind of go into the ground. And that visualization has worked really well for me.
Okay. And if you guys like to chime in for
Mhm.
for something that someone else has said, please just jump right in. So I guess what I'd like to know is how did you get very clear at discerning what's yours and what's someone else's? Because the way I understand it is, yes, you can be empathic, a highly sensitive person, but if you feel something, is because there is some resonance within you to whatever it is that you're feeling. It may not be active at that moment in you. Like, let's say, like, you sit next to someone who's really depressed. You may not be depressed at that moment, but you maybe at some point in your life you felt depression. So you can understand the feeling. Like, you wouldn't feel it if it wasn't in you. So, how did you get better at discerning what is yours? We could start with you, Kristen, and then you guys can chime in.
Mm, that's a really beautiful question. Uh, and I feel like there's no real short answer. It was kind of a process, like peeling back the onion layers, right? Um, One thing that I've learned in my process and in working with other people is that any energy that does not feel good in our bodies are naturally meant. Our souls are naturally meant to feel good. And if it doesn't feel good, it's because it doesn't resonate with us. We've ingested, we've swallowed, we've absorbed, because empaths tend to be like sponges, and we've taken on energy that is not ours. And because we've done that, it doesn't feel good in our body. So people develop things like anxiety and illness and depression or headaches all the time or exhaustion. All of those are sort of outside of ourselves coming in, and and that's a sign that we're taking on too much. So lots of times people will have things like major life depression or major life panic attacks, things like that happening, major illnesses going on, where you start to go like, hey, something's going on and this doesn't feel right. And you may go to millions of doctors before you find, spiritual teachers or whatever, healers that can help you dive a little bit deeper into what might actually be going on. And so that is a practice, and it is something that takes time to learn what is mine and what is yours, and what is mine and what is yours. Because if it feels good in your body, it's yours. And if it doesn't feel good in your body, it is not yours.
That's a really good that's a
Mhm.
really good point. You froze a little bit at the beginning, but at the toward the
Oh,
end we got it. That was
Mhm.
so well said, Kristen, that your natural state is love.
Mhm.
And if you are not feeling love, then something is out of alignment, something is not yours. That's such a great statement. Any other comments from you two about how you got better at discerning
Yeah, I
here?
mean, it took me many, many years to do it, right? And I mean, it took me many years to even recognize that this wasn't mine, because I know you said you can sit down next to somebody who's depressed, and if you don't have that in you, you don't feel it. And you may feel it later. No, when I sit down next to somebody who's depressed, I instantly feel depressed, which can, if you are not ready for that, or you're not prepared, or you have no context for that, can feel like mental illness that belongs to you. And so for me, discerning was very hard because I thought it all belonged to me. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome because I was exhausted all of the time. I went to doctor after doctor for years. And I think really what made me realize I needed to start discerning it is that I had my son when I was 30, and I started to see in him the same things I'd seen in me as a child, um, the anxiety and that type of thing. And I need to figure it out for myself so we could figure it out for him. And that's when I really started to look into it, and I started to study Reiki and crystals and healing and all of those things. And it took a visit to a healer for an illness that I had had for over a month, a very severe sore throat that wouldn't go away, that I finally went to an energy healer who I thought was a medical doctor, so my insurance was going to cover it. And she was, but she also did the energy healing. And as she worked on me, and I was very much, I don't believe in any of this at the time. And as she worked on me, and she just kind of did a thing that I learned and that I do now, is that as she was working in a certain area or a certain energy center, she would just sort of ask me questions and I would talk, and they would be emotional questions. So questions that had emotional depth. So for instance, as she was in my throat area, tell me about how you feel about your relationship with the truth and things like that. And something in the middle of all that clicked, and there was this whoosh in my body, and I started to cry, and I cried for 3 days, ugly cry. And on and off for 3 days. It was really great. I'm not a single tear rolling down my cheek person. I'm the, the snot sobber. That's me. Red face, horrible speaking voice. I'm that person when I cry. And but then from then on, I was like able to figure it out. I suddenly knew that all of these things that I'd had, they couldn't be mine. And so if I was sitting there feeling good and somebody walked up and I was feeling bad, um, guess what? That wasn't mine. And so now I teach that in my classes to energy healers, because I believe that people who are drawn to the healing arts are empaths. And most of them don't know it. And the reason that they're drawn to the healing arts is because they want to make people feel better, because it makes them feel better. And so now I teach them to recognize if it has nothing to do with what's going on in your life, with what you were feeling 30 seconds before, with what you were thinking 30 seconds before, with what was happening in your body 30 seconds before, it's probably not yours. And you can ask the universe, is this mine? And the universe will give you like a little click, like you either know yes or no. And it's that first instinct. It's not the one that you then talk yourself into later, right? It's that first instinct that comes into your mind. And then you can say, thank you for the information, use it to serve the greatest good. And then visualize. What I do is I visualize light energy just flushing through me and pushing it out into the earth, because the earth can neutralize it.